Picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Well, hello and Happy New Year. Welcome back. It's week 3 on the shuttle set build. I hope y'all had a wonderful New Year's Eve. And we're going to get right back to it. I'm trying to ease myself back into the work week. I did a little work over the weekend to create these tripods for the cameras. Of course, the great Jeffrey Fink would not let me rest. No, he found a photo of a camera dolly, and then within a 2 shakes of a snake's tail, he was able to recreate that in 3D. So I am printing that today. We will see how it goes, but that will give us a little camera dolly to go on here. And I've also found some truss files for the lighting and some more people that I'm thinking it'll work. A couple of them, or a few of them, have a pretty low res poly counts, so I don't know how well they're going to print. So we're going to find that out. And I think to ease into this week's work, I'm going to start by putting on the rank insignia and the delta shields on the figures, and that will get them done and off of the table so that I can concentrate on the rest of this. I'm to the point now where I'm just ready to call these figures done. As I've said before, you could spend a career making things down to the final T, and I think I've got them up to the point where if I try anything else, I'm going to end up screwing up something. So better to leave it alone than to having to go back to scrap, back to the starting point. So we're going to take the decals. We're going to get my decaling accoutrement out, and we're going to at least get that part checked off. No pun intended for Mr. Chekhov. To get that part checked off so that we could start finishing up some stuff. Let's see. Last week you saw got the window and the window insert done. That goes to the front wall here, and we've got the side walls. Now here's something you may want to take a note of. In at least more than one scene, I think it was in Galileo, but it may have been in another one. When the inside doors were closed, there was no top window, and not only were they gray, but there was no top window in the inside of that door. They did have the correct color for the bottom ramp, but which would have folded down something like that. But for some odd reason, the top door was gray. It wasn't even the darker green. It looked like a grayish gray. So that's what I'm doing with that. But I thought it was strange that they didn't even have the top window cut into them. So I'm stalling. I think I'm done. So that's printing. Yeah, I've got an order to get out today. Wonderful way to start the year with a new vinyl order. So you may hear some of that in the background today. But let's get the water and the toothpicks out and put some. Let's make these characters rank. The decaling is done, and you'll be happy to know that my love-hate relationship with round 2 and their decals continues. I absolutely love the idea that they did the delta shields as decals. That was magnificent. They also did something similar on the Razor Crest decals to do the faceplate for Mando, which I thought was brilliant. It really sets that detail in there. Now here's where they fell down. They backed the delta shields in white so that they stood out. They stand out against all of the different colors of the tunics. They did not back the wrist rankings in white. So therefore, while you can see them, particularly on Kirk and on Spock and McCoy, and to an extent on Kirk and Sulu, you cannot see them on Scotty or Uhura. The red, the color of the band just disappears into the red of the tunic. So I think that was a missed opportunity there. They can, if they could back the tiny deltas in white, they certainly could have backed the wrist insignias in white. So there you go. Unless, I mean, on like I said, on McCoy and on Spock, there's enough contrast of the color to show up, and because I painted Kirk a little bit greener than the other two command figures, even though I think Kirk I did in a greenish yellow, and Sulu and Chekhov I did just in a desert yellow. And there's enough contrast there, even though poor Chekhov has no ranking, has no wrist ranking. But Scotty and Uhura, forget about it. You're never going to see it. I put it on Scotty just so that, if you look real closely, maybe you can see it, but it doesn't show up as gold. Uhura, I had to just take some gold paint and just dot around the wrist with it with a fine a line as I could make. Also, they could have stood to have been a little bit longer. The decals, they do wrap around, except on the pointy hands. On the pointy hands, for some reason, the wrist is a little longer or it's a little fatter than the other wrists, and it's hard to bury where the overlap would be. You kind of have to put it on the underside of the seam, where it would be on a shirt. The seam going up the back or up the inside of the arm is where you would overlap that or hide the seam. But yeah, for what they are, they're very, very good. It's certainly better than trying to paint them on by hands. And I'm particularly glad they didn't try to do the raised detail. Because then that way you can put different arms on different bodies without worrying about putting a lieutenant's arm on a captain's body, that sort of thing. So I understand why they did that. The same reason why they put the different ranking, or they didn't include the deltas as molded in details. But having said that, the deltas were great. The wrist rankings could have been better. So now that that's done, I'm going to kind of let that sit to the side. My printing is about halfway done on the first run of girders and stuff, so we're going to see how those turn out. And I think what I'll do now is go ahead and paint up these tripods on the cameras. Okay, the day has been fruitful, but the fruit itself is not that noticeable. Spent a lot of the time today printing. Now, I'm printing another batch right now, but printing and cleaning parts. This is where we are on the Finkmobile. That's what I'm going to call this, the Jeffrey Fink camera dolly. There's a lot of detailing that needs to be added to this. I'm only going to make one pivot on it, and that is so that the camera can do this. Once I set the angle of the boom arm, I'm going to have to put the reinforcing arms on it. So that's kind of going to be like sort of what it's going to look like. So, that's about as definite as I can be. I've got some girders, lighting girders done. More of those are printing. I've got spotlights. We've gone back in and done a version 2.0 that's going to be easier to light. Plus it's got the pivoting arm on it so that I can attach it to the lighting truss and angle it and all that kind of stuff. And I've done the 3 different sizes. Most of them will be tiny ones here. So that's what's going on. And believe it or not, I was sent by a kind viewer an STL file for, let me see if I can clean this out. Believe it or not, it is so tiny that I can barely see what I'm doing here without putting the special glasses on. But believe it or not, it is a C-clamp. And I can then cut this to the right opening and put it on the kit, showing how the set walls would be C-clamped together. So that is a level of detail I wasn't even dare expecting. It's turning into a monster. At some point I need to get back to actually working on the shuttle and characters. Now, they've had all day for the decals to settle, and they seem to have settled nicely. And so that all but finishes the characters. Now I've got the Delta insignia, and for those that can see it, the wrist stripes. So we are all but done with these characters. So we're coming down to the short rows. I still need to put make up a ceiling for the engine room, but that shouldn't take too much to do that. I need to figure out my lighting truss. I think it's going to be something like this. Maybe something like this on both sides with this kind of a deal. I don't know exactly for sure. I can't stand anything front and back. The obvious thing would be to run a long one this way, but I don't know if that's going to be feasible given how I'm going to have to do it. It might end up being something like that, and then a light sticking down from each one on the top. Good afternoon and welcome back. It's Tuesday, and I think I'm done printing. I think I've been doing it pretty much non-stop for the last couple of days, and I think I finally got the people the right size. Now the problem with it, it's metric, and I don't know metric. I learned inches and feet. I didn't learn metric. But B, you bring something in that you found online, and you're getting it for free, and sometimes it's worth every penny. And you bring it in to your Chitu box, and you're scaling it up and down, and you don't know, since it's in millimeters, whether it's going to be the right size when you're done. So you print one out, and you say, okay, does it need to be 10% larger? Does it need to be 5% smaller? That kind of stuff. I really tried, not the stuff that Jeffrey has designed for me, which has been excellent, but the stuff that I've just been picking up online and bringing down, just because, you try to guess the number. Well, that's fine if you've got a person who's standing upright, and you say, okay, it needs to be 54 millimeters tall to be 1/32 scale, which is fine unless he's crouched over or sitting or something like that. And then I basically go off of head size and feet size. I pulled in the one alpha character that was standing pretty much straight up, and I used that as my yardstick, and I just measured the other characters against it, sized them up or down depending on how they related to it. And then after it printed, I pulled it out and I would put it next to McCoy, and I would say, okay, does that match those dimensions? And I've come up with some that I think do, finally, after about the third round on some of these. And I've got a good variety. I've got people that I think look like, so here's another sitting guy, people that I think look like they could be on a soundstage in the 60s. So no ultra-modern hairstyles or clothing, pretty much three-piece suits or coveralls or jeans and a pullover, something like that. I found this guy that I'm happy about. I think I'm going to use him on the camera dolly. Now, here is the camera doll. Here's the photo that the Thinkmeister, Jeffrey, the Thinkmeister, used as his reference. That's the camera dolly. And this is what he came up with, which is pretty darn good. Now, there's a lot of reinforcing brackets and things like that I need to build into this that we basically just didn't do. It's like a question of, okay, let's get the basic shapes, and then anything that's a piece of square stock or tubing, you could go ahead and do that out of scratch material. So that's what I'm doing. And also the girders, the light trusses. I've done a ton of trusses, and these were also files that I found online. It's a file. I've done it two different sizes. I've got this size, and then I've got this size, and they match the lighting barrels, the lighting canisters that Jeffrey had designed for me. Now we went back. I had painted all of these a few days ago, and then we went back and decided to revise. Sorry, that's the dryer. To revise the the files so that I can drill it through here and put a LED in there rather than having to go through the back. I can go up through the bottom now, and we've got these lovely U brackets which are going to keep me from having to bend a lot of wire and hope that I get it even each time. So that's kind of a one step forward, one step back on that. But I don't mind spending that extra time because it's going to look better in the long run, and it's going to save me time when it comes time to doing a bunch of mass production on these lights. Also, I went back and I resized the C-clamps. These are big C-clamps, but they're not so big that they don't exist in the real world. What happens is, see if I can pull that off, or is that going to break? That's going to break. I don't want to mess with that. But we can put these between the sections of the walls that we're going to. Here's my original to show you the difference. There's the original ones that I printed, and these ones that are about 200% of that. See, that's the big difference. You think I'm making, I'm going to make it 200%, well, 200% equals 4 times the mass. So, did that need to be 200%? No, it probably needed to be 150. And if I have time and I'm making another run of anything, I might do another size of these. But that's the kind of stuff that's been taking up my time. But now that I've got all the parts, and what just came out of the printer now was these junction boxes. And why do you need a junction box? Well, you need junction boxes to run between your truss towers. This is how you would join up 2 pieces of truss. You would take one of these and then you'd put the other one on like that, and that's how you would do your trusses. So getting those done, and I mean, look at that. I probably could have done that with one point of attachment, but that's basically 5 supports to do that. That's the fun thing about it. The more you print, the more the printing you do, the more you learn about how few points you actually need to support. That's 2 supports to print these little foot pads. These are meant to be the seats. These seats right here for the rig, but I also found out that they make wonderful foot pads for the cameras. So that's why I'm printing some more of those, because I could stick them in the tubing here. Not only does that close off the end of the tubing, but it gives it a nice finished look of a foot pad. So that's the kind of fun stuff I'm doing today. Sad to say, I haven't really touched the shuttlecraft in all that long. Yesterday I put all the decals on the figures, but today I haven't really gotten back into much of it. So now that I have all the parts, it's sort of like when you're starting a jigsaw puzzle. First thing I do is I put all the parts out and turn them over and get them organized, put all the edges together and all that. And now I can finally start doing the building. Well, we end the day much like we started it, with long, tedious work that takes forever and doesn't really show a lot of result. One thing I can show is the dolly crane, or the dolly vehicle. Certain amount of posability here. The camera does swivel like this, and it does extend a tiny bit. Mostly just in that range right there. But it does work. It is finished, except for all the painting. We've got one of our executives, perhaps a unemployed writer, sitting on one of the pads. I was able to get the figures printed that I wanted to get, that I wanted to populate the place with. This guy is going to be the producer or executive of some sort. Maybe some hotshot from NBC. We've got a boom operator here, but we don't have the boom in it yet, in his hands. We've got a couple of flunkies, because what good is a network executive without a couple of flunkies? And they will be flanking him. I think I'm going to need to either glue them down to the floor or to a base and then glue the base down to the floor, got a couple of script girls here that I don't know exactly where they're going to go, or whether they're going to hang around the cameraman or hang around the executive. And then we've got just another yahoo sitting on the side. Oh, we've got one kid here who's working on props. He'll sit something like that. Now, he didn't end up printing to print out quite as big as some of the others, so I am telling everybody he is a teenager, and that is why he's not as tall as the others. I've got the new round of lamps painted, primed at least. They will be painted tomorrow. Starting to work on the lighting rig. This is going to be suspended or hang or somehow exist over top of the roof here, and I'll have the smaller lights hanging from it. We've got the cameras painted up. These are the stationary cameras, and then we've got one of the big lamps here. Of course, this will be glued into position once we get that figured out. But I might even be able to start running wiring tomorrow. Who knows? Once I can run the wiring and determine the angle of the barrel of the lamp, then we can glue that in place and it'll be much more stable. That's it. That's where we're at for today. I was kind of hoping to be wrapping up by tomorrow, but this isn't going to happen. It's going to take most of this week to finish up, I'm afraid. And I didn't even get back into the major guts of the shuttle itself. I'm consoling myself with the fact that yes, I'm going to do a stage floor, but am I going to have to do a corner of the studio wall to kind of give it? That would give me some way to hang this. I don't want to get into that. I want to do just a stage floor, and that's it. But if I have a wall, if I have a corner there, then I'll have some place to put the spare pieces to lean them up against the wall. Morning, everybody. It's Wednesday. It's the hump of the week. We're continuing work on the shuttlecraft stage, and I'm suffering from TMI. This project is suffering from TMI, and that doesn't mean too much information, although that's also a problem. It is too many ideas. I've got too much stuff going on, so I put on the old Infinity Gauntlet, did a Thanos, and snapped away half of the stuff that I was going to be putting on this project. I had too many lights. I had too many people. It was just overwhelming. So I'm paring it all back to the bare essentials, and then as I get each bit done, then I will assess whether I need to add anything more to it. I was just staring at too much stuff all at one time, and it was overwhelming, and I don't mind telling you that I needed to be a little less whelmed, so I took away some of the stuff. And if I find it needs it, I can add it back. I worked on this front truss. I've got the front truss, and I'm doing, if you can see over here, I'm actually starting to work on the lights. In cases like this, when I'm saying I'm getting rid of half, it's like instead of putting 10 lights up, I'm going to start with 5. Instead of 6 of the big lights, I'm going to start with 3. Things like that. And if I need another one, I certainly got the parts here to add another one. I think once I get this first truss of lights put together, I want to get my stage floor set up, maybe put a 2-wall corner on that stage so that I can kind of set my project down and see what needs to be done. But right now I'm having fun working with the lighting, so that's what we'll be doing right away. I had things like this. I had 2 of these planned. I only really need to do 1. So I'm going to do 1, and then, like I said, we get to the end of it, and I think I need another one, then I'll add another one. Okay, so we're back at it. Now I've gotten more of the lighting done. I've got, and it was, the same old trick. Once you establish a pattern, you can go ahead and just knock out an assembly line of lights. Now I've got these 3 lights of Orient R. No, I'm sorry, I'm still in the holiday season. These 3 lights will go in this front truss, which I have got the first base coat of primer on. This will sit right up front here. And now that it's painted, you can kind of see the difference in it a little bit better. I'm going to hang 3 lights here that will shine into the front, the front of the shuttle. Complementing that, I will have a camera shining in. I will have a camera operator standing by. I will have a director who is telling the cameraman what he wants a shot of. And these might have to be glued down to the stage floor, depending on how stable they are. Added to that, I found this guy, which I think is going to be a nice boom mic operator. I just have to lower the boom on him. And that's going to be what's shining in the front. Now, I've also worked up this scaffold for the top of the shuttle. This was where I cut down a lot of the lighting. You can see only 5 lights hanging there. And that's going to sit on top of the ceiling like this. And now that I've got that much glued together, I can go ahead and put a primer coat on it, which is going to more or less attach the roof to the shuttle. I don't want to make that removable, even though, you know, you could. I think for removability, I'm going to have the back wall removable and the side wall removable. Beyond that, everything else is going to be nailed down. Now, on the side wall, we are going to have this camera on a dolly. We're going to have a camera operator. We may have another boom mic operator, depending. And then we're going to have this script gal who's hanging out with the cameraman. So that's going to do it for our people. Now, I've got this youth who is going to be working on a box there. He looks good. And I have yet to decide whether I'm going to put somebody back here on the door handle. I have another guy that I could use for that I could stand next to that door control. So things are starting to coalesce now, which is the important thing. So let me run out and put a primer coat on this, and that will help it look better. These will be aluminum in the grand scheme of things, so they'll get a silver coat after the primer coat. Okay, this little fistful of lights is what's going to be hanging down over this freshly primed overhead lighting truss. Now, what I need to do is go ahead and get the paint on these boxes here. Then we can start maybe assembling some of this stuff. Wouldn't that be fun? Alright, you're getting ready to wind down for the day, and the reason you don't see the shuttle here is because I've taken the humongous step of gluing it, epoxying it, as a matter of fact, epoxying it down to the stage that I've made. It's a 3-walled stage. I couldn't show it in here because it's kind of huge and my table's a mess. But we're to that point where I have got the big bulk of the ship is epoxied down to a base. I've got 2 walls. I'll show you that probably first thing in the morning. Right now I've got weights holding it down and all that kind of stuff. Starting to work on some of these set dressing figures. And I think I have time left today. I've got the main lights. I've got the little wings on them. And they're about ready to be installed on this, but there's 2 things that have to happen first. I have to have this painted silver, and then I have to have it mounted on the floor in front of the shuttle so that I know what the angle of these lights are going to be. These are going to pivot inside of those little U brackets, there, and I need to aim those and then kind of zot them with a CA to keep them in place. Here's another one of the, this one is strictly set dressing. It's not going to light up. That's strictly set dressing, but that's a lamp that maybe if I have time later on and I decide to, I can add a light to that, but that's not on the agenda at this point. One last thing I need to do that's going to be very tedious is I need to put all of the, let me see if I can get this back on the stand first on the dolly crane. There we go. I want to do the same thing with these small lamps, and that is I want to put the little winglets on the front of them. Well, we're getting ready to close up for today, and I'm going to do some massive cleaning because this place has gotten away from me again. But I'm starting to work on some of the extraneous figures. The dolly cart, I've got the aluminum coating on the light trusses. Those will be ready for lights tomorrow. I've got the lights ready here, and I've got the baffles or wings or directors on all of those. And they did get a gray coat. I'm going to do maybe a little bit of a dry brushing with some gunmetal, but I agree that they should not have been black. Black is your stereotypical, and they'll be black on the inside of the fans. But looking at some backstage pictures, they were more gray. As long as they stand out from the silver, that's the important thing. Hello, friends and neighbors. It is Thursday, and things are going very well today. I'm starting to actually put things in their proper places. Now, I built this stage up yesterday, and then I realized I forgot to paint it, and I've already glued this guy down. Not just glued, I've epoxied this guy down. So I'm going to have to paint those walls from the outside. I mean, I'm going to have to tarp this thing and then paint those walls. That was a big grand mistake. I was so hot and heavy on getting this thing mounted that I forgot. I mean, I can live with the stage floor being this color, but I need to do something with those walls. So while I am beating myself up about that, I decided to go ahead and start getting the lights in. Now, what I did was I clamped this thing in place where it's going to live, and then I aimed the lights where I wanted them to go and quick CA'd them in place so that they wouldn't move. And now that they're in, I can remove the whole structure and do the painting, finish painting and all that, and clean up of that. And let me see if I can, because these wires are the devil themselves. The wires that I've chose to use are very strong. They're very resilient, and they don't like. I mean, they'll jerk back out of. They're very strong. It's a single strand copper wire, and it wants to go where it wants to go. I've purposefully made it extra long because I don't know where my final wiring power jack is going to be. So better to have extra on here. But let me go ahead and put some power to it and show you how it looks. Of course, I'm doing all of this off camera because it's not that exciting. But here you go. There are the three main lights. And when you put them in place, they shine inside the cockpit like they're supposed to. So I got to do that. Now, the next thing I want to do, since I'm on a roll with this and I kind of understand the methodology and how it has to happen, so I want to go ahead and do the one that goes on the top frame, get those lights in, and then I can kind of put the soldering iron away for a while and concentrate on painting. I want to wait till I get this one done so I can kind of, since they'll all be using similar paints, I can kind of do them all at the same time. But I thought it was important to kind of lay everything out so you can see how things are going to rest in their final incarnation. I've got the stage pieces. I've made up some sandbags to weigh down the back of those panels. Here you can see some extra stage equipment that may or may not ever get used, but we've got a big old lamp back here that needs to, see, I made it collapsible. I made it inside a tube, but it's more trouble than it's worth right now. Made a big old ladder. Actually, I didn't make the ladder. It's a stock item. I just cut it and put a hinge at the top of it. But so we've got a big old ladder, and I'm starting to think of the, like I said, the stage props and how are things going to be leaned up against walls or into corners or things like that. So we stick that back there, get it off of the way. I've got my people that I'm working on. This would be, that's not the main camera. The main camera is, yes, it is the main camera. That's the main camera that goes right there underneath the arch of the lighting. I've got characters to populate this. You've seen all these. I got the director, got the camera operator. I've got a boom man. I need to get a boom in his hand so he doesn't look so odd just standing there. And then I've got the, keep reaching in front of the view here. Got the dolly camera with that camera operator. He's not shooting anything right now, so he's taking a bit of a break. And luckily his girlfriend, the script gal, is coming to visit. Now I have to do a base for her because her feet are too small to stand by themselves. This is the back wall removed with the camera shooting in. I don't know where that's going to sit there or just be moved around somewhere else. Here we can see the rest of the back wall and the ramp. Ramp might go something like this. But yeah, I'm laying out all the pieces, and I may yet cut some of the that base off just to give it a more interesting angle and hopefully take up less space. Sorry about the racket, but it's that time of the week when I get more orders in, and that's what keeps these studio productions going. So I didn't want to wait to show you this. I've got the top lighting truss done, and that's going to fit something like, well, imagine the light wiring being in the back corner. Imagine that being back here. I just don't want to do that for right now, but I think we can get an idea how that's going to light up the inside. Let me lower the camera. Ironically, move the camera out of the way so that I can put my camera in here. Now remember that this video camera will make cool LEDs look a lot bluer. But there you go, and I like the fact that it's even throwing the pattern of the screen against the floor. You can see the pattern when I do this. You see the pattern move. Now, the one last thing to do, other than do all the painting here, I am planning on putting colored gels in those lights. I've got those samples still that, like I used for the Gremlin 3D glasses. I've got those theatrical, they actually are theatrical gel samples. And I can cut tiny squares and stick them in the lights to color these. There you go. And by the time I add the main bar at the front, that pushing light in the front way. Let me see if I can wire both of those up. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, here we are at ground level with the camera. Excuse the jiggling. And I've got the white balance set, something a little more natural than the hyper blue, but you can see, again, let me hold that camera still. We can see the overhead light. We move that around. And then we've got the front light also shining in on our main actors. Now, I didn't want something so powerful that when it was on, it was going to, you know, give our poor actors a sunburn. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm shorting out the lights, don't mean to. So that is set up so that the camera, there's all three of the lights, we'll do something like that, so that the camera would fit underneath that lighting rig, but it's pointing down at our cast of characters. Let me find the camera and put that in place. Here's what the camera would look like. So you see that it is fitting in under the lighting. But that's very successful compared to what I wanted to do. That's pretty much spot on what I wanted it to do. And now I'm just going to go in and touch up the paint and put the gels on. Okay, here you can see everything kind of stripped down to the minimum. And that was because I had to go back in and paint the back wall. I may have mentioned this before, but I was so insistent on getting the shuttle glued down that I forgot to paint the back wall, and it made it exponentially harder to do it this way, but it had to be done. So that's drying, and this we can put to the side. Dust it off. It needs a good dusting because of all of the stuff that's happened to it. Particularly the floor of the carpeting needs to be dusted. But I can put this to the side now and concentrate on some of the smaller bits. Okay, so we have a momentary lull in the plotting so that I can show you what I've been up to. I've been putting gels in the lights and giving them some color so they're not all that cool white. Now the issue I'm having is that some of these colors are very strong and some of them are very weak, and I've had to double and triple them up. For example, one red gel, one red one is fine, but to get any oomph out of the yellow ones, I've had to go 3 and 4 pieces thick. I don't think it's cutting the actual light out so much, but it is taking that much work just to get some color tinting. So those are the front. I may want to put one more green one in here because I've got a green light that is shining on Leonard Nimoy, and I've got a orange light that is shining on Shatner, and a yellow light in the center. So I'm trying to do a skin tone lighting for their characters, obviously, not for them. Something that will make them look happier and healthier. You take an actor and you put makeup on them, and then you put a light on it that will accentuate his healthy skin tones to make him look healthier or sicker, depending on what is the dramatic necessity in the scene. So yeah, I'm going to put another layer of the and this is just these are these little samples that I've pulled out, and basically all I'm doing is putting a dot of CA in the center of it, and that's how I'm sticking them together, is with layers of CA. And now that's a little greener. There. So we're going to let that dry, and then maybe we'll get them down on the stage floor today. Alright kids, well it's Friday afternoon, time for me to start cleaning up and get this thing ready to be uploaded. And I wanted to keep it a surprise, but I'm going to show you in a second. I've got everything set up. I'm not done. Was hoping to get done this week, but I was having so much fun that I carried it on. It'll probably carry on into next week. I don't know how much more there really is to do, but at this point I don't want to rush the finish line. So let me show you. I've got plenty of things here that haven't been painted yet. I've got more stuff printing that hasn't been painted or added to the set. Oh, we're at 92%, so it's almost done. But let me show you where we are, and then we'll go from there. And here she is at the current state, kids. Pardon the shaky cam, but I'm holding the camera back so that I can swoop around it and get some different views. Most notably, the first thing you're going to see is the lighting trusses are in. Let me see if I can, again, show you what's happening here. We've got a couple little vignette stories going on. We've got a director of photography, we've got the cameraman, we've got Earl the sound guy holding the boom, going down to the recorder on the floor. We've got Mr. Nimoy. You can see Mr. Doohan in the back. We've got Mr. Shatner with a question. Mr. Kelly behind him. And if you go around to this side, you can see the lights there shining down and giving me that nice pattern spill on the floor and on the walls. Look at that, how that blue light looks back on that wall. And then out here we have a camera dolly, and we've got Mr. Takei, Mr. Koenig, and Miss Nichols all complaining that they are not in this scene, and how come. And we're looking at the other, maybe he's the writer, maybe he's an assistant director, but he's sitting on the camera dolly and he's shooting the breeze with the supporting character, shall we say. And then we've got the two walls kind of off and to the side. I've got the sandbags holding those in place. Back in the corner we've got some extra equipment. There's a big light there, some ladders. I might add some more stuff back in there. Here we can see the front wall of the shuttle is off to the side since it's not being used in this shot. And then we've got a little bit of space out here for another vignette story that I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but you can still see we still have some unpainted characters and stuff there that can go. If nothing else, I might just slice that corner off and decrease the footprint of the whole model. But oh, and here's the ramp that's kind of positioned in there for when they need to put the other set together. They can slide the ramp back in there. Here, take an overhead shot of the lights looking down, and the front lights heading in. And if I had a tiny GoPro, I could lay this down on the floor. Well, maybe I can do this, and you can see how the characters look inside the wall. You can just make out those wall computers are lit. Now you might be able to tell that I have not painted these director's chairs or anything. That still has yet to be gone, and I'm printing some more chairs even as we speak, and I've got a couple of other characters that I want to sit down in here. But that's where we're going to wrap it up for this week, I think. Oh, and if you look carefully in here, you can see the dashboard lights for the shuttle. Until none of this stuff, other than the shuttlecraft itself, but none of the people or anything has been glued down. That's why I'm kind of dancing around it very lightly. Once I'm 100% happy with how they look and glue them down, then I'll be able to spin this whole thing and show you how this camera here is actually pointing through the open door to shoot the front wall. In those times when you might want to do that, we can move, get these ladders out of the way, we can move this wall back in place and cover up the rear. Still have yet to come up with a ceiling for that, and I think maybe I'll do that quickly over the weekend so as to not take any vital screen time away from you doing that. But that's where we're going to rest it for this week. And that, gentle viewer, is going to do it. It's did I expect to be done with this by now? Yeah, but I'll tell you what, when you're having this kind of fun, you don't want it to end. So until next week, when who knows how much more of this we'll end up building. Y'all be good, be safe, be smart, take care of each other, and we'll see you here next week.